Some moments don't scream when they arrive. They don't crash or shatter loudly. They slip into your life quietly and stay forever. That night, under soft golden lights and white roses, my son looked at me and said words I will carry to my grave. "Mom, you need to go. She doesn't want you here." There were nearly 200 guests around us. Music floated through the garden, laughter echoed from the tables. And yet, in that moment, the world went completely silent. My name is Victoria Hale. I'm 57 years old. And this is the story of how a wedding didn't just break a family, it forced me to finally save myself. We had spent months preparing for that evening. The ranch garden looked like something from a dream. White lilies, lanterns hanging from oak branches, candles flickering in the warm dusk. I had sewn table linens myself during long, sleepless nights, stitching love into every thread. This wasn't just my son's wedding. It was a celebration of everything we had survived together. My son, Ethan, was marrying Lena, a woman who entered our lives 2 years earlier and quietly changed everything. I wore a deep sapphire dress that night. It had belonged to my mother, who wore it to my own wedding decades ago, on this same land. My hair was pinned neatly back, my makeup simple. I wanted to look dignified, proud, like a mother should. When I stepped into the reception area, Lena noticed me immediately. She didn't greet me. She didn't smile. She leaned toward Ethan and whispered something. His shoulders stiffened, his jaw tightened. I recognized that look, the same one he had as a boy when he knew he was about to hurt me but didn't want to admit it. He walked toward me quickly. "Mom," he said quietly, glancing around, "Lena thinks your dress is too noticeable. She says the color pulls attention." For a moment, my chest felt tight, but I swallowed it down. "It's all right," I said gently. "I brought another dress. I can change." "No," he replied, his voice suddenly sharper. "That won't help." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "She's overwhelmed. Your presence makes her uncomfortable. She feels judged." I looked around. Guests filled the space. Music played. Glasses clinked. No one noticed us standing just a few steps from the head table, a mother being erased from her own child's life. "Ethan," I said softly, "I planned this wedding. I paid for half of it. I'm your mother." His voice rose, and with it the entire room went quiet. "That doesn't give you the right to ruin her day." Then he said it, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Please leave. My wife doesn't want you here." Something inside me broke, cleanly, quietly. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I simply nodded. I picked up my purse and walked away. No one followed. No one stopped me. I drove back to the ranch alone, the keys hanging against my chest, the same keys my father had placed around my neck before he died. The land, the house, 4 generations of history. The same keys my son had started asking for the moment Lena entered his life. I folded the blue dress carefully and placed it back in the closet. I didn't sleep that night. And when my phone rang the next morning, his name glowing on the screen, I knew this story was only beginning. The phone rang just after sunrise. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring into a cup of coffee that had already gone cold, the same brand I used to brew for Ethan when he was a teenager and woke before dawn to help with the horses, back when life was simple, back when love wasn't conditional. When I saw his name on the screen, I didn't feel relief. I felt gravity. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mom?" Ethan said. His voice sounded worn, like someone reading from a script they hadn't written themselves. "Can you come by the ranch? We need to talk." The word we told me everything. I'm already home, I replied calmly. Silence followed, then a quiet exhale, then I'll come later. I hung up without waiting for a reply. The house felt too large that morning. Every hallway echoed. Every room carried memories of a boy who once promised he'd never leave this land. 15 years earlier, when his father died, Ethan was only 12, too young to carry grief, yet old enough to shoulder responsibility he never asked for. "Mom, I can fix it," he used to say, dragging tools taller than his legs. "You don't have to be strong all the time," I would tell him. "I do," he'd answer. "I'm the man of the house now." And he tried. God knows he tried. We grew up together on this ranch, repairing fences, counting cattle, surviving droughts and winters that tested our resolve. He learned how to negotiate feed prices before he learned how to shave. I learned how to lean on him without breaking him. When he left for college, I cried quietly in my room. When he returned and said, "My place is here, with you," I thought life had finally rewarded us. Then Lena arrived. She came from the city, sharp heels, polished smiles, conversations about profit margins and growth potential. The first time she stepped into this house, she looked around like someone inspecting a property listing. "You live here?" she asked. "We live here," Ethan corrected her. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. After that, things shifted slowly. Ethan stopped sitting with me on the porch. He talked about modernization, about turning the ranch into something profitable, about selling off land that had never once been measured in money. That morning, as I moved through the house, my fingers brushed the keys hanging against my chest. My father's keys. The night before he died, he placed them around my neck and said, "Don't let anyone take this from you, not even blood." I hadn't understood then. Now I did. Ethan arrived in the afternoon. His truck pulled up, unfamiliar somehow, like it no longer belonged here. He walked in without knocking. "Mom," Ethan said, "we need the keys." I didn't react. "For what?" I asked. Lena's voice floated from outside, sharp and impatient. "We want to make some changes," Ethan continued. "Just updates, new furniture, remodeling, nothing major." "That furniture was built by your great-grandfather, with his hands." He sighed. "You're living in the past." "No, I'm protecting it." He finally looked at me, really looked, and for the first time I didn't see my son. I saw someone already halfway gone. "The keys stay with me," I said quietly. His face hardened. "You're being unreasonable." I touched the metal at my chest, cold, heavy, unyielding. "Then be prepared," I said, "because I'm not done choosing yet." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about a wedding. It was about control. And the keys weren't just keys. They were a line no one would cross again. After Ethan left that afternoon, the house felt different. Not emptier, watched. I tried to shake the feeling, telling myself grief has a way of playing tricks on the mind. Still, every creak of the floorboards made me pause. Every open door felt intentional, as if someone had already begun imagining this place without me in it. That night, I barely slept. By morning, the phone rang again. "Mom," Ethan said, his tone noticeably colder than before, "Lena thinks we should sit down and talk like adults." I almost laughed. "About what?" I asked. "About the future, the ranch, and you." There it was. We agreed to talk later that day, not at the house, neutral ground, as Lena called it, a restaurant in town, recently renovated, full of glass and steel. Everything this ranch was not. When I arrived, Lena was already seated. Perfect posture, perfect hair, a glass of white wine waiting beside her plate. She looked calm, too calm, like someone who had already planned the outcome. "Victoria," she said warmly, "thank you for coming." I sat across from her and ordered water. "I want us to clear the air," she began. "We've had a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I repeated. She smiled. "Ethan feels stuck between us, and that's not fair to him." I folded my hands. No one is asking him to choose. "But he already has," she replied gently, "and that's the problem." She leaned closer. "This ranch, it's beautiful, but it's also a burden. Maintenance, costs, isolation. You're alone out there." "I'm not alone," I said. She tilted her head. "You are. Ethan doesn't live there anymore." That one landed exactly where she wanted. "You could sell or lease part of it, turn it into an event property. People pay incredible money for places like that." "And where would I live?" I asked. "Wherever you want," she said quickly. "A nice apartment, something easier, more practical. At your age, comfort matters." At your age? I felt the word scrape against my spine. "This isn't about comfort, it's about legacy." She sighed, like a teacher dealing with a stubborn child. "Legacy doesn't feed grandchildren." I looked at her sharply. "Is that what this is?" Her jaw faltered just for a moment. "Ethan owns half," she said, "and he deserves access to what's his." "Ownership and control aren't the same," I replied. "You know that." She stared at me, no longer pretending. "You're standing in the way of his future." "And you," I said quietly, "are standing in the way of his past." Her jaw tightened. "You're clinging to a house, to land, to ghosts. And you're clinging to power." The silence between us was sharp. "Think about this carefully," as she stood, "because if you don't cooperate, things will get complicated." "Are you threatening me?" I asked. "No, I'm warning you." That evening, I returned home unsettled. I walked through every room, touching the walls, the furniture, the photos. This house had raised generations. It had survived wars, losses, storms. And now, ambition. In my husband's old study, I noticed something wrong. A drawer slightly ajar, papers not where I left them. And then I saw it, the yellow envelope. Gone. My heart sank. The letter my husband told me to open only if someone ever tried to take this land from me had vanished. I stood there in the dim light, the keys pressed tight against my chest. That was the moment I stopped pretending this was about disagreement. This was about invasion, and I was no longer just a mother. I was the last gate standing. I didn't confront Ethan that night. I didn't call Lena. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I locked the doors. The next morning, I drove into town and parked outside a small brick building at the corner of Maple Street. The sign read, "Harrington and Cole, Estate Law." It hadn't changed in decades. Neither had the man behind the desk. "Victoria Hale," said Richard Harrington, standing slowly. "I was wondering when I'd see you again." His office smelled of old paper and coffee. I told him everything. The wedding, the demand for the keys, the restaurant meeting, the missing envelope. His expression darkened. "They took documents without permission?" he asked. "I don't know who," I replied, "but the letter is gone." Richard leaned back. "Then it's good you came." He opened a file drawer and pulled out a thick folder labeled Hale Family Trust. "Your husband was meticulous," he said. After his diagnosis, he updated several protections, including one you never exercised. My stomach tightened. What kind of protection? A contingency clause, he said, one that activates if coercion or undue influence is detected. I stared at him. You're saying he expected this? He feared it, he corrected, especially if someone tried to pressure you through your son. He slid a document across the desk. According to the clause, the ranch could not be sold, transferred, or altered without unanimous consent, including mine, unless I willingly relinquished guardianship of the estate. And if I don't? I asked. Then no one touches the land, he said. Not Ethan, not his wife, not a court. Relief washed over me, followed by something colder. But the letter, I said. It explained all this. He told me to keep it safe. Richard nodded, which means someone knows it exists. On my way home, I noticed a black SUV parked near the entrance of the ranch. It drove off the moment I slowed down. That evening, Ethan showed up unannounced. Why didn't you tell me about the lawyer? He demanded. I set my bag down calmly. Because you didn't ask. You're making this hostile, he said. Lena is just trying to help. She took documents from my house, I replied. He froze. She wouldn't. The envelope is gone, I said. Explain that. Silence filled the room. She said she was organizing. Without permission, I said. He looked away. I didn't raise you to confuse love with obedience, I said quietly. His voice cracked. You're tearing us apart. No, I replied. You're letting someone else do that. That night, I opened my husband's old safe, the one even Ethan forgot existed. Inside, beneath faded deeds and photographs, was a copy of the missing letter. My hands shook as I unfolded it. Victoria, if you're reading this, someone has already crossed a line. Do not hand over the keys. Do not doubt yourself. This land was never meant to be owned, only protected. Tears blurred the ink. For the first time since the wedding, I smiled. Because now I knew something they didn't. I wasn't powerless. I was prepared. And the next move would be mine.
The letter stayed folded in my pocket all night. I didn't sleep much, not because of fear, but because clarity has a way of keeping you awake. Once you see the truth, your mind refuses to look away. By morning, the first move came. A courier arrived just after breakfast. Crisp suit, neutral expression. He handed me a sealed envelope and asked me to sign for it. Inside was a legal notice. Lena's name appeared first, Ethan's second. They were requesting temporary authority over ranch operations, citing my declining capacity to manage property efficiently. I laughed, a short, hollow sound that startled even me. Declining capacity? I'd balanced accounts during drought years, negotiated contracts with men twice my size, buried a husband, raised a son, and kept 4 generations of land intact. And now, suddenly, I was incapable? I called Richard immediately. They've escalated, he said calmly after reading the notice, which means they're nervous. What do we do? I asked. We respond, and we prepare. That afternoon, Ethan showed up again, this time with Lena. She didn't bother pretending this time. You received the notice, she said, walking straight into the living room. I did. It's insulting. It's procedural, she corrected. You're emotional. This protects everyone. I'm not emotional. I'm informed. Her eyes narrowed. Then you understand we can take this to court. And lose, I replied softly. Ethan stepped between us. Mom, please, why are you fighting this? I looked at him, really looked and saw exhaustion carved deep into his face. Because this isn't about the ranch, I said. It's about erasing me. That's not true, Lena snapped. I moved your seat at the wedding. You removed my photos from this house. You took legal papers without permission, and now you're questioning my mental capacity? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Ethan turned to her. You did what? She straightened. I did what was necessary. For who? He asked. Silence answered. I reached into my pocket and placed the letter on the table. This, I said, is what my husband left behind. They both stared as I unfolded it and read aloud the final lines. If anyone tries to take this land by force or fear, remind them, protection is not possession. Lena's confidence cracked. This changes nothing, she said tightly. It changes everything, I replied, because now your actions qualify as coercion. Ethan looked between us. What does that mean? It means, I said gently, that the clause activates. Richard's voice echoed in my head. If they push, they lose leverage. Lena stood abruptly. You're manipulating him. No, I said, you are. Ethan stepped back, just one step, but it was enough. That evening, he didn't leave with her. He sat on the porch staring out at the land he once loved. I didn't know it got this far, he whispered. You let someone speak for you, I said. That's how it starts. He rubbed his face. I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore. I placed the keys in his palm, then closed his fingers around them. Not the man who takes, the one who protects. His eyes filled with tears. Lena watched from the driveway, arms crossed, fury written into every line of her body. And I knew then, the fight had shifted. This was no longer a quiet struggle. It was a war of intent, and Lena had just shown her hand. Lena didn't come back the next day. Neither did her calls. At first, I thought silence might mean retreat. I was wrong. Lena didn't retreat, she repositioned. By mid-morning, Ethan's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, missed calls, notifications lighting up his screen like warning signals. She's telling people I'm manipulating you, he said quietly, setting the phone down on the table. That I'm unstable, that you're controlling. I sighed. That's how fear works. It gets loud when it's losing ground. Around noon, Richard called. She's contacted a different firm, he said, a very aggressive one, and she's filed an emergency motion. For what? I asked. Psychological evaluation, he replied. Ethan's face drained of color. They want to prove I'm unfit, I said. That's their angle now. They won't succeed, Richard assured me, but it will get ugly. It got ugly faster than expected. That evening, Lena arrived, alone. She didn't knock. She walked in like she owned the place. Ethan stood up immediately. You can't just— Yes, I can, she snapped. This is my husband's family home. No, I said calmly, it's not. She turned on me, eyes sharp. You think you've won? You've poisoned him against me. You did that yourself, Ethan said, surprising us both. She stared at him. After everything I've done for you? For me, he repeated, or for what I could give you? The question hit harder than any accusation. Lena laughed bitterly. You're unbelievable. She turned to me. You know why I pushed so hard? Because people like you don't give things up unless they're forced. I stepped closer. And people like you don't know when to stop. Her smile vanished. I grew up with nothing, no safety net, no land, no inheritance. I learned early, you take control or you get crushed. That explains you. It doesn't excuse you. Her voice rose. "I married into this family. I earned my place. You married my son. You didn't earn ownership of our history." Something inside her snapped. "You want the truth?" she shouted. "Fine." She pointed at Ethan. "I didn't fall in love with the ranch. I fell in love with potential, with what this place could become. Resorts, events, expansion." Ethan's breath caught. "You said you loved it for what it was." "I loved what it could give us," she corrected. The room went silent. Ethan stepped back like the floor had shifted beneath him. "So I was a path, not a partner." Lena didn't deny it. She straightened her jacket. "I did what I had to do." That was the moment everything changed. Ethan walked to the door and opened it. "Leave," he said. Her eyes widened. "You don't mean that." "I do," he replied, "and don't come back without a lawyer." She stared at him, disbelief turning into rage. "This isn't over," she hissed at me as she passed. "No," I said softly, "it isn't." After she left, Ethan collapsed into the chair, hands shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't see it." I placed my hand over his. Seeing late is still seeing. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like a long exhale. The ranch stood silent, watching, waiting, and somewhere deep inside me I knew Lena wouldn't accept defeat quietly. She would strike again, but this time she'd exposed herself, and there's no power more dangerous than a truth that's finally been spoken aloud. The first rumor reached me through the feed store. I was picking up supplies when the owner, Mr. Calder, leaned across the counter and lowered his voice. "Victoria," he said carefully, "people are saying things." I already knew what kind of things. "About the ranch?" I asked. "About you," he replied. "About Ethan. About lawyers." By the time I reached home, my phone was filled with messages. Old neighbors, distant relatives, even people who hadn't spoken to me in years. "Are you okay? Heard something strange. Hope it's not true." Lena had taken the fight outside the family. By afternoon, a local blog posted an article with no author name. It hinted at an aging landowner refusing to adapt and a young couple blocked by emotional manipulation. No names, no proof, just enough to stain reputations. Ethan read it twice, jaw tight. "She made me sound like a victim," he said, "like I don't have a voice." "That's intentional," I replied. "If you're weak, she's justified." That evening, the pressure reached its peak. A group of townspeople gathered near the ranch gate, not angry but curious. Whispers carried on the wind. "She should sell. It's too much land for one woman. Change is inevitable." I stood on the porch, keys heavy against my chest, and felt the weight of generations watching me. Then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Alvarez, who'd lived down the road for 40 years, stepped forward. "This land fed our families during the drought. Victoria didn't close her gates when others did." Another voice followed. "She paid wages when no one else could. She kept the school open. She's earned her right." The crowd shifted. Lena's story cracked under the weight of truth. Later that night, Richard called again. "We found something," he said. "What kind of something?" I asked. "A pattern," he replied. "Lena has a history." He explained carefully. Prior relationships, business ventures that collapsed right after asset transfers, partners who walked away poorer and quieter than before. "She's done this before," Ethan whispered, overhearing. "Yes," Richard confirmed. "Different names, same strategy." The room went cold. Ethan rubbed his temples. "How did I miss this?"
Because she didn't show you this version, I said gently. That night we gathered old records, bank statements, emails, contracts, not to attack, to protect. As midnight approached, headlights appeared at the gate. Lena's car. She didn't get out. She just sat there, watching the house, the land, the people who had chosen their side. Then her phone buzzed. Ethan's. A single message. If you don't stop this, I will destroy everything you love. Ethan handed me the phone without a word. I read it once, then again, and then I smiled, slow, steady, unafraid. Save that, I said. It's the mistake she didn't realize she made. He looked at me. You're not scared? I am, I admitted, but fear doesn't mean surrender. The ranch lights glowed warmly behind us. The land stood firm. Lena had gone from quiet manipulation to open threats, and that meant one thing. She was running out of moves. Richard didn't waste time. By morning, Lena's message was logged, backed up, and added to the growing file labeled Documented Coercion. The words she sent in anger now carried legal weight, the kind that doesn't fade with excuses. This changes the tone, Richard said. Threats move cases fast. Ethan sat across from me at the kitchen table, hands wrapped tightly around a mug he hadn't touched. I never thought she'd go this far, he said. People reveal themselves when they're cornered, not when they're comfortable. By noon, a formal response was filed. Not aggressive, precise. It cited harassment, intimidation, and attempted undue influence. No insults, no emotion, just facts. That afternoon, the confrontation came. Lena showed up with her lawyer. They didn't ask permission to enter the property. Richard was already waiting. "This is private land," he said calmly. "You're trespassing." Her lawyer smiled thinly. "We're here to negotiate." "No," Richard replied. "You're here because you're losing leverage." Lena's eyes flashed. "You think a text message gives you power? It gives us context and proof." She laughed sharply. "You're overplaying this." "Am I?" Ethan asked. She turned to him. "Don't do this." "You already did," he said. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hale, we propose a settlement, a buyout, generous terms. You want silence, not settlement." Lena slammed her hand against the table. "I built plans around this place. You built fantasies, on land that was never yours." Her voice rose. "You're ruining my life." "No," Ethan said quietly. "You tried to take ours." The words hit harder than any legal argument. Her lawyer glanced at her, uneasy. "Miss Carter," he said cautiously, "perhaps we should reconsider our position." She stared at him like he'd betrayed her. That's when it happened. She lost control. "You think these people support you?" she snapped, gesturing toward the windows. "They'll turn on you. They always do." The room went still. Richard closed his folder. "That statement," he said, "will also be noted." Lena realized too late that every word was being documented. Her confidence drained, replaced by something raw and furious. "This isn't finished," she said, grabbing her bag. "I'll take this public." "You already did," I replied, "and the truth survived." She stormed out. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Is it wrong that I feel relieved?" "No," I said. "It's called clarity." That evening, the blog post disappeared. The comments went quiet. Rumors lost momentum when facts entered the conversation. Mrs. Alvarez brought over soup. "You stood your ground. Your husband would be proud." I looked out over the land, the fields catching the last light of day. For the first time since the wedding, the ranch felt like home again. But I knew better than to believe the storm had passed. Lena wasn't finished. People like her don't stop when they lose. They look for something to burn. And soon, I would learn exactly what she was willing to sacrifice. The first sign was the bank call. I was in the barn, checking inventory, when my phone vibrated in my pocket.
The number was familiar, the branch manager who'd known our family for decades. "Victoria," he said carefully, "we need to talk. Today." My chest tightened. At the bank, he slid a statement across the desk. 3 accounts, frozen. "These were flagged last night," he said. "Large attempted transfers, unusual authorizations." I scanned the details. Lena's name appeared again. "She doesn't have access," I said. "She did," he replied, "through Ethan. Joint signatures, set up months ago." Ethan sat beside me, face pale. "He didn't realize," he whispered. "She said it was for efficiency." "Efficiency," I repeated. "That's her favorite word." Richard joined us shortly after. His jaw clenched as he reviewed the documents. "This was intentional," he said. "She tried to drain operating funds." "But failed," the manager added. "Your safeguards caught it." Safeguards my husband had insisted on years ago. Another quiet act of protection. When we returned home, Ethan didn't speak. He went straight to the study and shut the door. An hour later, he came out holding a folder. "These are copies of everything," he said. "Accounts, emails, authorizations. I'm ending it." I met his eyes. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "I should have ended it the moment she asked for the keys." That evening, he sent the message, brief, firm, final. "This marriage is over. Do not contact me directly again." Her response came within minutes. Angry, desperate, unfiltered. Threats, accusations, pleas, blame. He didn't reply. Instead, he forwarded everything to Richard. The next morning, the town woke up to the truth. Not gossip, but documentation. The blog posted a retraction. A new article followed, citing legal filings and verified sources. Lena's patterns surfaced publicly, not dramatically, but clearly. People stopped whispering. They started understanding. By afternoon, Lena's car appeared at the gate one last time. She got out this time. Ethan walked toward her alone. I watched from the porch. "You used me," he said calmly. "I believed in us," she replied. "You believed in access, to money, to land, to control." Tears streamed down her face. Real or strategic, I couldn't tell. "You were choosing her over me," she said. "I'm choosing myself." That was the end. She left without another word. That night, Ethan sat beside me on the porch, the same place he'd sat as a child. "I feel like I lost years," he said. "You gained sight. That matters more." He looked out over the fields. "I want to fix what I broke." "You already started," I said. The keys rested between us on the table. For the first time, he didn't reach for them. He respected them, and that told me everything. But healing isn't immediate. Consequences linger. Lena was gone, but the damage she'd tried to cause still needed repair. And the hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was rebuilding trust, with the land, with each other, and with ourselves. Silence returned to the ranch slowly. Not the heavy silence that follows loss, but the cautious kind, like an injured animal testing whether it's safe to step back into the open. The accounts were unfrozen within days. Vendors were reassured. Rumors faded into newer news. Life, practical and unromantic, demanded attention. Still, something had changed. Ethan woke early again the way he used to. He helped mend fences without being asked. He listened more than he spoke. When people from town stopped by, he faced them, not defensively, but honestly. "I messed up," he told them, "and I'm fixing it." They respected that. One afternoon, we sat together at the kitchen table, papers spread between us. Not legal threats this time, but plans. "I don't want to control anything," he said. "I want to contribute." I studied him carefully. "Then start by asking, not assuming." He nodded. "Can I?" That single question healed more than he realized. We worked side by side for days, reviewing expenses, planning repairs, talking about the future without trying to conquer it. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan stopped near the old oak tree. "Dad used to stand here," he said. "He'd say the land tells you what it needs if you shut up long enough to hear it." I smiled. He was right. That night, I opened the safe again, not out of fear, but intention. I took out the letter and handed it to Ethan. He read it slowly, carefully. "I wish I'd heard him say this," he whispered. He did, just not in words. Later that week, Ethan made a decision. "I want you to stay in charge. Formally, I'll step back from ownership decisions." I shook my head. "This isn't about removing you." "Then make it shared, balanced, transparent." So we did. New boundaries, clear roles, no assumptions. Trust rebuilt not through promises, but through structure. On Sunday, the town gathered for the harvest dinner. Nothing fancy, just food, laughter, and shared history. Ethan stood beside me as people spoke kindly, not out of pity, but respect. Mrs. Alvarez squeezed my hand. "You didn't just protect the land, you protected your son." I watched Ethan laugh with neighbors who'd known him since childhood. "He protected himself," I replied. That night, as the stars spread across the sky, I sat alone on the porch. For the first time in weeks, my chest felt light. The keys rested against my heart, not heavy now, but steady. I understood something then. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't threaten or demand. It waits. It endures. And when tested, it stands. But peace has a way of reflecting unfinished business, because just as life was settling, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single line typed neatly. "You think this is over. It isn't." I folded the paper slowly. Not afraid, just ready. Silence returned to the ranch slowly. Not the heavy silence that follows loss, but the cautious kind, like an injured animal testing whether it's safe to step back into the open. The accounts were unfrozen within days. Vendors were reassured. Rumors faded into newer news. Life, practical and unromantic, demanded attention. Still, something had changed. Ethan woke early again, the way he used to. He helped mend fences without being asked. He listened more than he spoke. When people from town stopped by, he faced them, not defensively, but honestly. "I messed up," he told them, "and I'm fixing it." They respected that. One afternoon, we sat together at the kitchen table, papers spread between us. Not legal threats this time, but plans. "I don't want to control anything," he said. "I want to contribute." I studied him carefully. "Then start by asking, not assuming." He nodded. "Can I?" That single question healed more than he realized. We worked side by side for days, reviewing expenses, planning repairs, talking about the future without trying to conquer it. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan stopped near the old oak tree. "Dad used to stand here," he said. "He'd say the land tells you what it needs if you shut up long enough to hear it." I smiled. He was right. That night, I opened the safe again, not out of fear, but intention. I took out the letter and handed it to Ethan. He read it slowly, carefully. "I wish I'd heard him say this," he whispered. He did, just not in words. Later that week, Ethan made a decision. "I want you to stay in charge, formally.
I'll step back from ownership decisions. I shook my head. This isn't about removing you. Then make it shared, balanced, transparent. So we did. New boundaries, clear roles, no assumptions. Trust rebuilt not through promises, but through structure. On Sunday, the town gathered for the harvest dinner. Nothing fancy, just food, laughter, and shared history. Ethan stood beside me as people spoke kindly, not out of pity, but respect. Mrs. Alvarez squeezed my hand. You didn't just protect the land, you protected your son. I watched Ethan laugh with neighbors who'd known him since childhood. He protected himself, I replied. That night, as the stars spread across the sky, I sat alone on the porch. For the first time in weeks, my chest felt light. The keys rested against my heart, not heavy now, but steady. I understood something then. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't threaten or demand. It waits, it endures, and when tested, it stands. But peace has a way of inviting reflection, and reflection often uncovers unfinished business. Because just as life was settling, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single line typed neatly. You think this is over? It isn't. I folded the paper slowly, not afraid, just ready. The letter sat on the kitchen counter for 2 days. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. Its purpose wasn't information, it was intimidation. Lena's last remaining language. By the third morning, Richard confirmed what I already suspected. She's filed a civil claim, he said. Wrongful influence, emotional damages. It's weak, but loud. Ethan clenched his jaw. She's trying to drag this out. She's trying to exhaust you, Richard replied. People like her rely on fatigue. I folded my hands calmly. Then we won't get tired. The hearing was scheduled quickly. Not a trial, a preliminary review. Still, the word court has a way of shaking even the strongest nerves. The night before, Ethan sat with me on the porch. I keep thinking about the wedding, he admitted, about how easily I let her push you out. I didn't interrupt. I was so focused on starting a new life that I almost erased the one that raised me. You noticed, I said softly. That's what matters. The courthouse was small. Familiar faces filled the benches. Townspeople, neighbors, quiet supporters. Lena arrived late. She looked different, not polished, not composed. Her confidence had thinned, stretched too many times. Her lawyer spoke loudly. Accusations, emotional language, claims of manipulation. Then Richard stood. He didn't raise his voice. He presented facts. The message threats, the attempted transfers, the unauthorized document removal, the pattern from her past. Piece by piece, her story collapsed under its own weight. When Lena took the stand, her composure finally cracked. I loved him, she insisted. The judge asked calmly, Did you love him or what he could provide? Silence answered. The ruling was brief. The claim was dismissed. Warnings were issued. Further contact was prohibited. Lena left without looking back. Outside, Ethan let out a breath he'd been holding for months. It's done, he said. Almost, I replied. That evening, he did something I never expected. He returned the keys. Not placing them on the table, not handing them back, he hung them gently around my neck himself. I forgot what they meant. I won't again. Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness, but release. Later, alone in the quiet house, I walked through each room slowly. The ranch had weathered another storm. So had we. And yet, closure doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in layers. In forgiveness you give yourself. In trust rebuilt patiently. In knowing when to hold on and when to let go. As the fire crackled low, I realized something important. Lena had lost, but more importantly, she no longer mattered. The ranch stood, my son stood beside me, and I stood not as a woman clinging to the past, but as one who had protected it long enough to pass it forward. Still, one final decision remained. Not about land, not about ownership, but about legacy and who would carry it next.
The ranch woke gently that morning. Mist hovered low over the fields, softening the edges of everything it touched. I stood on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the land breathe, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not fragile, not temporary. Earned. Ethan joined me quietly. No rush, no tension. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what comes next." "So have I," I replied. We walked the perimeter together, step by step. He listened as I spoke about boundaries, about stewardship instead of control, about why this land survived so many generations, because no one tried to own it alone. At the old fence line, he stopped. "I don't want this to end with me," he said, "or start with me either." I smiled. That's the right place to stand. Later that day, Richard returned with documents, not court papers, but intention made legal. A family trust revision. Ownership would remain protected, decision-making shared, no unilateral power, no shortcuts. And something new. A clause for education, for community use, for sustainability. "This place gave a lot," Ethan said as he signed. "It should keep giving." That evening, neighbors gathered again, not in defense, but in celebration. Food was shared, stories retold, laughter returned where tension once lived. Mrs. Alvarez hugged me tightly. "You didn't harden," she said. "You healed." After everyone left, Ethan stayed behind. "There's one more thing," he said. He pulled out a small wooden box, worn at the corners. "My father gave this to me when I was 12, he said. "He told me not to open it until I understood responsibility." Inside was a simple note, written in familiar handwriting. "Legacy isn't what you keep, it's what still stands when you step away." Ethan swallowed hard. "I think I finally understand," he said. I reached for his hand. "Then you're ready." That night, I returned the keys to the hook by the door. Not around my neck, not locked away. Visible, shared, respected. I slept deeply. No threats, no letters, no fear. Just the quiet knowing that storms don't define us, choices do. And the choice to protect without controlling had changed everything. As dawn broke, I realized this story was never about betrayal. It was about boundaries. Never about land, about values. And never about losing a son, about raising one twice. Some endings don't close doors, they open them wider. And somewhere beyond the fields, beyond the past, a future waited. One built not on power, but on trust. The first rain of the season arrived quietly, not the kind that floods or tears the ground apart, just enough to darken the soil and wake the seeds buried deep below. I stood by the window and watched it soak into the earth, and I thought about how much this land had endured. How much we had. Ethan was already outside, boots muddy, checking the drainage along the lower field. He moved with confidence now, not urgency, not fear, just presence. That was new. Later, we walked the fields together, the rain cooling our faces. The oak tree stood tall, roots deep and unshaken. "Do you think the land remembers?" Ethan asked suddenly. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "It remembers how it's treated." That afternoon, we placed a small wooden marker near the edge of the property. Not a monument, not a name, just a reminder. Protected, not owned. It wasn't for others, it was for us. As weeks passed, life continued, ordinary and beautiful. The ranch hosted school visits, community gatherings, shared harvest days. The land worked the way it always had, not for profit alone, but for purpose. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan joined me on the porch. "I used to think strength meant taking charge," he said. "Now I think it means knowing when not to." I smiled. "Your father would agree." He nodded. I wish she could have seen this. I knew who he meant. Some people can't see beyond what they want. That's not your burden to carry. He exhaled slowly, a release I'd been waiting to hear. That night, I wrote one final letter. Not to Lena, to myself. I wrote about the wedding night, about the hurt, about the silence, and about the choice not to harden. I folded the letter and placed it in the safe, not as a warning, but as a reminder that love isn't weak, that boundaries aren't cruelty, that walking away from power can be the bravest act of all. On the first anniversary of the Harvest Festival, Ethan handed me a small package. Inside was a simple necklace, a key carved from wood. It's not for locks, it's for meaning. I laughed through tears. The old metal keys still hung by the door, but I no longer needed them around my neck, because what mattered most was no longer at risk. The land was safe. My son was whole, and I was no longer afraid of being left behind. Some stories end with loss. Ours ended with understanding, with roots strengthened, not severed, with a future that didn't erase the past, but honored it. And if you ever pass by that ranch, you won't see anything extraordinary. Just fields, trees, a house that stood a long time. But the land will know. It always does. Because land, like love, remembers who protected it when it mattered most.